Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's a very difficult time for us. As you know, over this past weekend on early Sunday morning, we lost one of our members, Sergeant Thomas Sanfratello. He was a veteran here for 32 years. He was more than a fellow worker. He was a friend. He was bottom line, he was a great person. This morning we're going to try to recap what happened. We are going to try to answer as many questions as we can for you. You have to realize that this is an ongoing investigation, so there are questions that we just will not be able to address at this time. But again, we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. We have members of the Genesee County Sheriff's Office, Genesee County Legislature, Genesee County Manager, along with the DA's Office, City Police Department, and the City Manager here. I am going to turn, well, first of all, if we can go down through and people can introduce themselves so you know who's talking.
Under Sheriff Bradley Mazer.
Chief Deputy Criminal Investigation Division, Joe Graff.
Chief Deputy of the Road Patrol, Brian Friday. Ian Sanfratello.
County Manager Matt Landers.
Legislature Chair Rochelle Stein.
And I failed to introduce myself. I'm Bill Sharon. I'm the Sheriff of Genesee County.
Kevin Fennell, DA.
Joseph Robinson, First Assistant District Attorney.
Sean Hybush, City of Batavia Police Chief.
Chris Camp, City of Batavia Assistant Police Chief.
Matt Ludy, Detective Sergeant with the Batavia.
Rachel Tabelski, City Manager.
And before we get started, I just want to thank everybody that has supported us right from the get-go on this. The community outpouring has been unbelievable, unbelievable. I don't know how we'd get through it without this, and I just can't thank everybody enough. I'm going to let the undersheriff kind of recap along with the Joe and Brian, and then we'll turn it over to the city police.
Sheriff, would it be possible whoever's speaking could be in front of the podium just so we can get their audio on our microphones?
See why not?
We'll do our best.
Okay.
At about 12:45 hours, there was a report of a disturbance in the 34 Rush Bar located inside Batavia Downs. Sergeant Sanfratello responded to the bar along with security members of the Batavia Downs. The two individuals that were causing the disturbance were asked to leave, and while being escorted out, the female defendant became combative. She struck Sergeant Sanfratello. Sergeant Sanfratello was able to take her into custody. During this incident, while taking her into custody, the male defendant returned to the lobby of the Batavia Downs where Sergeant Sanfratello and the female defendant were located, and a physical struggle ensued with the male defendant. At that point, multiple agencies responded to Sergeant Sanfratello's call on the radio for additional assistance.
Sergeant Sanfratello had called for assistance. Deputy sheriffs from our office responded to assist him along with officers from the Batavia City Police Department, New York State troopers, Mercy EMS medics responded, as well as civilians who were in the casino at the time. Everyone immediately began assisting Sergeant Sanfratello with life-saving measures, which were not successful. Both subjects were taken into custody at that point and removed from the facility. Members from the Criminal Investigation Division of the Genesee County Sheriff's Office did respond to the scene. We initiated a criminal investigation into the matter. Shortly into the investigation, the decision was made to turn the investigation over to the Batavia City Police Department. And at that point, we turned it over to the City Police.
Go on.
Good. First, I just want to extend our deepest sympathies to the family of Sergeant Sanfratello and all the members of the Genesee County Sheriff's Office. This is a very difficult time for all of them and all of us. Sergeant Sanfratello was a great man. Approximately 12:45 a.m., City of Batavia patrol officers overheard radio transmissions made by members of the Genesee County Sheriff's Office who were handling a disturbance at the Batavia Downs Casino, located on the city line, half the property in the City of Batavia, half the property in the town of Batavia. Initially, a single Batavia police officer began heading towards the Downs to assist sheriff's deputies as needed. While en route, there were further radio transmissions indicating that CPR was in progress and yelling and screaming could be heard in the background. Upon arrival by the Batavia police officer, they saw a male and a female subject who had been placed into custody but continued to violently struggle with sheriff's deputies and other staff, Batavia Downs security and bystanders that had jumped in. Further, the officer saw other bystanders as well as sheriff's deputies performing CPR on a uniformed sheriff's member, later identified as Sergeant Sanfratello. Additional Batavia police officers arrived on scene and assisted with controlling and transporting both the defendants to the Genesee County Jail, where they were held pending further investigation. Officers returned to assist the Sheriff's Department personnel. EMS had been on location, and despite life-saving efforts of Sergeant Sanfratello was declared deceased by the Genesee County Coroner's Office. At this time, administrative staff of the Sheriff's Office, the Undersheriff, Chief Deputies, as well as myself and the Assistant Police Chief had arrived along with other City of Batavia Police Department members. After a brief consultation, the decision was made to turn the criminal investigation over to the Batavia Police Department. Detectives from Batavia PD immediately began the process of interviewing and deposing witnesses as well as reviewing video evidence that was available. The District Attorney's Office responded and consulted during the entirety of the investigation. Charges were filed later. That was put out in a press release. Both were processed by Batavia PD members and arraigned in centralized Raymond Park Court. This is an ongoing investigation, and the casino was very busy that night. We're asking anyone who may have witnessed this incident and or may have digital evidence, videos or photos to contact our Detective Bureau. We have created a QR code that will take them directly to a site where they can drop video into our evidence. We have some on the table here if you would kindly take those and distribute those. I also want to recognize the Batavia Downs staff and several bystanders who jumped in without hesitation to render aid and assist. A lot of them have already come forward, but we're asking anyone else with information to come forward and talk to us, as this is an ongoing investigation.
Thanks, Sean. At this point, we will open to questions. Again, we'll do our best to answer them.
Chief, I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on what the struggle was between the defendants and the sergeant.
They were resisting arrest. It's obvious in the videos that the subjects were not going into custody without a fight, so they were physically resisting arrest very violently.
Can you talk a little bit more about the use of a metal chain or piece of jewelry in that incident?
Yeah, so during the altercation, you can see one of the defendants, male defendant, remove a large piece of jewelry from around his neck, a chain or a metal thick rope that was used during the struggle. So I can't get into the details of what happened with that, but it was used as part of the attack.
The court documents say he used that to put the sergeant in a chokehold, is that right?
No, that's incorrect. Court documents say the sergeant was placed in a chokehold.
Was did he swing the chain freely, or did he wrap it around his fist? And
I can't get into those type of details as part of the investigation.
The sergeant used a taser, which was initially reported in the release. Did that strike anyone, or what happened with the taser when he discharged it?
Yeah, we feel that it did strike the male defendant, but it was not effective, unfortunately.
Has there been any blood work on either defendant to determine their degree of intoxication, if there's other drugs involved?
I will turn that question over to Kevin. I don't believe we.
There's been no direct blood testing that I know. I know it's procedure for the jail to do a screening for drugs and alcohol. My understanding is they were not initially cooperative with that process, however, may have ultimately done that.
When we spoke to the prosecutor yesterday, you indicated, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there had been an autopsy done, but perhaps you did not get the report as yet to know the exact cause of death.
Yep.
Has that been determined yet, what the cause of death was?
It has not. The autopsy has been done, as you mentioned, but the report has not been released.
Was that Monroe County, or who did the autopsy?
The Monroe County Medical Examiner performed the autopsy.
You discussed, that there's CPR and that civilians and security staff were directly involved. I wonder if you could elaborate on who performed CPR, whether civilian or security or Batavia Down staff, and also were civilians directly involved in tangling with the defendants, and then also you described additional officers being involved when they got on scene and having a physical altercation. Is there any charges related to that with those officers? Could there be, and were any of those officers hurt?
To my knowledge, no other officers were hurt during this altercation. I will leave the charging issue up to the DA's office. However, there were several members of Batavia Down security staff as well as bystanders that were both performing CPR on and off, as well as holding the defendants down in an effort to help us get them into custody. So it was, the answer is
Co-effort by both
everybody.
sides.
Yeah. Yes.
Are you able to clarify just a little bit on the body camera? I understand the sergeant wasn't wearing a body camera, or it wasn't rolling. Were responding officers, did they have body cameras on, and were those turned on?
Yes, the responding officers all had body cameras on. My understanding is Sergeant Sanfratello was not wearing one. He was not wearing one.
District Attorney, I wonder if you could, the charge that you've levied is aggravated manslaughter. For the public watching, who may not be familiar with the legalese, can you explain what that implies, what you're getting at?
The aggravated aspect of the manslaughter is because the deceased Sergeant Sanfratello is a police officer.
And manslaughter says what?
In this particular case, it's intent to cause serious physical injury, causing death of a police officer.
The arrest report mentioned deadly weapon with the charge. Is that just statutory language, or are you considering the chain deadly weapon?
It's a statutory language, but the chain is the focus of that language.
We'd asked yesterday with the deputy if there was a possibility of further charges here. What would you say to that? I think you indicated there might be a grand jury that would rise to possibly with this case.
Well, a grand jury will certainly review the evidence. The evidence is not we have the investigation, as you just heard, is ongoing. Until the investigation is concluded, we cannot predict what additional charges, if any, might be filed in connection with this case. We'll wait to see.
The two defendants were arraigned yesterday. Are they still in custody?
My understanding is they still are in custody on bail.
Sheriff, I don't know if this is a question for you, or Chief for you. Can you describe and help us understand what the two defendants were doing prior to this incident that got them removed from the casino? What were they doing?
They were in the area, as I mentioned earlier, 34 Rush bar. They were causing a disturbance within the bar. The staff there refused to serve them. They were asked to leave. They continued to cause that disturbance, requiring assistance from Batavia Downs Security and Sergeant Sanfratello.
There was a burglary charge levied against Ms. Wilcox. Why? I guess why? What was the burglary charge?
Well, the burglary charge itself is stemming from her being combative with the officer and the security staff at Batavia Downs when she was asked to leave, thereby indicating that she was remaining unlawfully in that building.
Sheriff, in the initial report, it said that Sergeant Sanfratello was there on special assignment,
Yes.
I believe. Had there been issues at the casino prior to this, anything specific with either the defendants or staffing levels with casino security, anything like that? Why was he on special assignment?
We have an agreement with Batavia Downs for weekends to have a uniformed officer on duty as a deterrence, basically. We took that on late fall last year. I'm sorry, what was the rest of your question?
Just why he was there, and he
Okay.
was the only one that was on special assignment.
He was the only one that was there, right?
So that evening, there was several events going on. There was an MMA fight and there was a concert. There was a lot of people there. Any requests from the Downs for extra patrols because of the events that were
No.
ongoing?
No.
Sheriff, how do you think Mr. Elmore's actions contributed directly to Sergeant's death? And I'm sorry for the
To Sergeant Sanfratello's death?
To his death.
I think I would.
Well,
refer
that-
to the DA.
Well, that is part of the investigation, and that's certainly going to be significantly answered when we get an autopsy report. We can't really address at this point the mechanics of the death, so we'll have to wait on that.
Kevin, yesterday after court, Mr. Elmore said, quote, "My life over." Would you consider that an admission of guilt, and is that an admissible statement that could be used against him?
Well, any statement that he makes spontaneously, whether it's in the course of the crime or his detention thereafter, including at court, can be used, in my opinion, should it become relevant at a later trial.
Would you consider that an admission of guilt, or is that something to further examine?
I would consider that an admission that he's done something that he regrets deeply.
Can you talk about the timeline here? From what point were the two defendants here told to leave, and then at what point were first responders on scene to try to revive the sergeant?
That's not something I can talk to at this time. I don't know if the sheriff can or not.
It was within minutes. The two subjects were asked to leave the bar area just minutes before CPR was in progress.
There were several fights going on, while I was there for 20 minutes, even after while you guys were there. Is this fighting, an issue there?
No.
To my knowledge.
Okay.
No.
Called there?
No, I think this goes back to the question that was asked there. We've had minimal complaints at Batavia Downs. Nothing ever to this extreme, or fights, no.
I guess furthermore too, how long was that altercation between the defendant and the sergeant to the point where he became unresponsive?
It lasted 2 to 3 minutes, the altercation before the sergeant became unresponsive.
Can you talk about Mr. Elmore's background? I think there have been reports about his criminal record in the past. Can you say anything more about that?
He is known to law enforcement.
In what way, can you say?
We've had contact with him in the past.
Has he ever threatened a police officer, to the best of your knowledge?
I don't know, I'd have to review that.
Kevin, when I was in court yesterday, of course, Mr. Robertson represented you, and I don't want to misstate anything because I couldn't really hear well, but there was a discussion about orders of protection, and I thought I heard something relevant, and I know they were for Mr. Sergeant Sanfratello's family, and I couldn't exactly hear what Joe said, but was there something about threats to family from Elmore's family or friends? I know the Border Protection covered third-party contract. Could you just address, are there issues with people associated with Mr. Elmore and the Sanfratello family?
I have been advised that there were some statements made, the content of which or the degree of the statements themselves I'm not aware of, but they were sufficient for us to ask for orders of protection, more of as a prophylactic measure to make sure that there's no contact.
Sheriff, are you able to give our viewers a little more of an idea of who Sergeant Sanfratello was and anything you might want to add just about him and his life and his character?
Oh, wow. Unbelievable person. I know Tommy since he began. He was just an incredible human being. He was always there for everybody else. He had many important functions here in the department. He ran our civil department. He was on the State Sheriff Association accreditation program as an assessor. He oversaw our Darien Lake details. As you know, we have many concerts out there, many thousands of people. He ran them flawlessly. Tommy was one that, counted on, and if Tommy was involved, I didn't have to worry about anything.
Ian is here, would you like to say anything about this, Bobby?
Well, we're gonna get to that, okay.
I'd like to add that I also have known Tom since he first hit the road, and we talked on a regular basis about cases and issues. He'd often call and say, "I think I know the answer, but," and he always did. But he never lost his enthusiasm for the job, for what he did. And he was a very, very good police officer, and he was a better man. So we will all suffer a loss from a long time to come, and we will miss him dearly. I'd also like to express my thanks for the community's support thus far, the outpouring of support not only for the Sanfratello family, but in the assistance of this investigation.
Is there any possibility that there would be a change of venue for this case at all down the line, you think?
I can't predict that at this time.
Sheriff, how is your office doing after this?
I would say on the surface, everybody's holding up, but I don't think it's really hit home yet. We have a funeral to go through. All in all, I think everybody's doing the best they can. Again, the support that we've gotten from the community, from other police agencies, City of Batavia Police Department has been unbelievable. So we're working through it. You know, we've had counselors involved, and we had some meetings the other night with department members, and we will continue to have those. That's
Sheriff, is there any indication that drugs or alcohol were an element in the suspect's alleged behavior?
I think alcohol. Oh, I know alcohol was involved the other night, but drugs or whatever, I have no clue.
And Chief, you would put out a request for more video from the public or anything, as you mentioned, the QR code. I think a lot of people are thinking, okay, it's a casino. There's gonna be tons of cameras everywhere. What would you say you need further from the public? Is it more definitive, or what are you looking for at this point?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's a ton of video. It's a casino. We do know that. We did, with cooperation from Batavia Downs, get all of that into our possession. However, any video that we can get from any angle is important to us, to identify potential witnesses in other actions that may have occurred, that may have been outside of the cameras of the casino itself. So that is extremely important to us, to be able to identify anything else that's out there.
Do we know if there was a relationship between the two defendants?
It's my understanding they're in a relationship there.
And then Sheriff, would you be able to talk more about the memorial out front here? We were by the patrol car yesterday, and there were only a couple of bouquets of flowers, and now it's just filled with all these flowers and gifts in honor of him.
That was something that was brought up by one of our members that he has seen in the past. It's another tribute to Tommy. As you can see, it's gained a lot of momentum. The community is really behind us, and it's a demonstration of that. We'll have that out there for the rest of the week, so whoever wants to contribute to it.
My impression, even before this, is that Sergeant Sanfratello was one of those rare individuals that has like almost no enemies. Everybody seems to like him. And would you address, what about his personality to make him so likable?
I think you can go back to even his early years. He started out as a EMT in an ambulance, then went on to become a volunteer fireman with the Alexander Fire Department. Started his career here at the Sheriff's Office as an emergency services dispatcher, went on to the road patrol. So I think that really, you look at Tom Sanfratello, and that's what he did. He served. He served our community, even from, I think he was a late teenager when he started as an EMT on an ambulance. So I think that goes right to Tom's character.
Tommy never said no. You know, if you needed something, Tommy was there. It didn't matter who you were, what time of day or night it was. If he could help you, he'd help you. And I think the guys always knew him as a resource too. You know, if they had something they weren't quite certain of, you know, okay, who do we? Let's ask Tommy. Tommy will know. And yeah,
I'd
Sheriff,
just add
what
that
would you
goes
say
for all.
about the memorial service? I mean, I know usually there are other elements of law enforcement who want to take part and be there, and sometimes there are processions. Has anything been thought about that?
Well, we expect a large crowd, as with any death of a police officer. You know, it's a brotherhood, you know, we expect to see, you know, many police agencies there. It's gonna be at the Call Arena out at the Genesee Community College, calling hours and the actual service.
I have a follow-up question to that, but I think the chief wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what the sheriff said. I mean, Tommy was a resource for every law enforcement officer in this county, not just within the sheriff's office. I mean, I personally called Tom on many occasions to ask for advice on something, whether it dealt with a civil matter or whatever. He never said no. He always answered his phone. One of the first guys I ever met when I got to Batavia. Just a great guy. And you know, just a snippet from the videos is before this encounter occurred, Tom was talking to people within the casino and he was smiling and laughing with them. I mean, that's just the personality that Tom had.
My follow-up question, and this is more for planning purposes, is if I'm remembering correctly, and I didn't go back and look this up, but for Deputy Ward Narrow, it was in a church, smaller venue. I believe the media was outside. Call Arena is much bigger. Are we going to have access to the service, or are we going to remain outside? And I'm just not. Either way, I'm just wanting that for planning purposes.
We will have a staging area for media. Whether or not we can get you inside, that hasn't been determined yet.
Is this for both the visitation and celebration of life, or just one?
I would say for both.
I'd like to wrap this up.